Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Italian Sud Tirol for today's cross-country examination. A little later, the women, but coming up in about 10 minutes' time, it'll be the men in classic style over 15 kilometers. Alongside myself, David Goldstrom, Mike Dixon, and a very good morning to you, Mike.
Thank you, David. And what a beautiful morning it is. -4 and blue skies as usual in this part of the world.
Yeah, just all over Central Europe, we have really good weather conditions, particularly for spectating. And Toblach, about 70 kilometers from Bolzano along, and as you come down the Brenner Pass. And as you can see, Alexander Legkov from Russia, the last to win a 15-kilometer race here. That was a couple of seasons ago. But rewinding to yesterday, what a day it was for Italy, but equally a huge day for British Nordic skiing. Here's Mike with his thoughts on what happened yesterday with Britain's Andrew Young.
Well, he did so well. Great run out to qualify through, and the third fastest straight time to qualify through with the bib number 3. He opted for group 5, which on paper an easier loop, but he had the fastest man alongside him, Finnhagen Krog, and made it look easy, Andrew Young. He made it look effortless.
But coming into the business end of the race, Andrew, who'd made it look effortless through the quarterfinals and also through the finals, really a tremendous finish.
And there we have it, third place, the podium for the first time in cross-country skiing in the sprint competition.
Federico Pellegrino with that extra gear dominating the sprint rankings in the early part of the season. Back-to-back victories after his success last weekend in Davos. But for 23-year-old Andrew Young, having finished 9th in Davos, his first ever World Cup podium. As for Pellegrino, he just goes from strength to strength. 5 wins now in the World Cup. And he's showing a clean pair of heels to just about everybody in the division. But there's no doubting there were real scenes of joy amongst the Brits, and the Waxmen deserve a big pat on the back in the British camp because they delivered perfect skis to Andrew Young. So almost set to go, about 7 minutes away from the start of this 15-kilometer race. 92 starters. Andrew Musgrave and Andrew Young are amongst them. 4 minutes to go to the start of the men's 15-kilometer classic, and an opportunity to catch up with one of the stars of Nordic men's skiing. No less a man than Petter Northug, who's yet to fire on all cylinders this season, but could be a big threat in this race today. So let's hear from the man who is very much the master of 50 kilometers now on his thoughts about 15 kilometers.
And 15K, it's a long way. The hills aren't big, but they're long. It's a long way to go maybe on the double pole. It's a game for the athlete, but also for the teams.
Yeah, it's tough to do double pulling in 15K. I think it's easier in a 10K that we saw last year in Tour de Ski, but this year I think the most of them will do waxing. I tried double pulling in Davos in the 15K last year, and the last 5K I still have nightmares about that, so it will be tough.
Well, we know you like to gamble a little bit, so we look forward to seeing what you decide tomorrow. Good luck.
Thank you.
So Petter Northug, and here's Mike with his thought on the course. 3 laps of 5 kilometers.
And here it is, the Saskia lap, as it's called, or track, and of course Saskia Santo, the chief of competition. Northug alluding to the fact that you could get by if it was 10 kilometers to only use double poling, so skate skis and only using arm power, but I honestly don't think many or any will try it today. Look at the profile. The first 1 kilometer is easy, then you climb up to the high point, so 750 meters difficult, and then to be honest, it's just undulating on the journey back to the stadium. But 3 times round that, David, and a total climb of 507 meters. Not easy.
And look who's going to get us underway, the Olympic champion from 2006 over 50 kilometers in freestyle, 43 years young, Giorgio Di Centa. Andrew Musgrave, he goes early amongst the seeded group. Andrew's had a bit of a cold during the week, but hopefully if he can get into the top 30, that will be an achievement given his preparation and his conditions. And after yesterday's euphoria with Andrew Young, we need to just keep things in context, really, for the two British boys. Andrew Young in this, but he will be really using this as an endurance to really prepare him for the Tour de Ski sprints.
Well, that's right, and now as he's stamped his authority in sprinting, I think that's clearly his focus for the remainder of the season. And no harm done to race out Classic. He is a very good Classic skier over this distance. He had a very good pre-season race in 15-kilometre Classic.
Well, it's noticeable with the two British boys that, in fact, the skating is actually going pretty well, but perhaps a little more work on the Classic over the coming year and a half building up to the Olympics will be very beneficial.
Certainly will, and Norway's the right place to be if you want to improve your Classic style. And of course, Andrew Musgrave in Trondheim, Andrew Young in Lillehammer in Norway.
So once again, good morning everybody. Delighted to have your company in Italy, in Toblach, in the Südtirol. Mike Dixon alongside myself, David Goldstrom, and some quick news about one or two absentees. Kalle Halvarsson, who's been under the weather, the Swedish ski star, together with his teammate Marcus Hellner, Austria's Bernhard Tritscher and Simeon Hamilton, who had such a fantastic runners-up spot behind Pellegrino, just ahead of Andrew Young. None of them taking part today. And I can also tell you that Chris Freeman, he's been sick for a while. He's a Classic specialist and he's not able to start, and neither Jonna Sundling in the women's race, which follows a little later in the day. So 92 starters listed, a few absentees as I've just explained, 25 countries represented. Mike Dixon alongside myself, David Goldstrom. Bib number one, the legendary Giorgio Di Centa for Italy, 43 years young and a veteran of 10 World Championships, 5 Olympic Games. But the most important fact is that he's an Olympic champion over 50 kilometers freestyle. A fabulous day in his life, but back in 2006. But the appetite's there. This is his office, and he's about to go to work.
Yes, you say, what a legend. Oh, the stats are amazing, and to win his 50-kilometre at home at the Olympic Games at home was, I think, clearly the big moment in his career and his life. And then to be awarded the medal later by his sister at the closing ceremony, as is traditional for the 50-kilometre winner.
The 15-kilometre Classic being held here for the third time in the World Cup. Alexander Ledkov won here in 2014 ahead of Dario Cologna and Marcus Hellner, who's one of the absentees. And if you go back in history, Vladimir Smirnov, the legendary Kazakh, won here back in 1993. And there have been lots of different winners over the 15-kilometre competition. Francesco De Fabiani, he won actually in Lahti last year and is still in the under-23 ranks. And Peder Northug, Sundby, who's been the most successful distance racer coming into this early part. Sundby seems to always do extremely well in the pre-Christmas races, but then, you know, he's been World Cup champion for the last couple of seasons. Ledkov, Polteranin's been successful here as well. So interesting day here with so many of the recent competitors involved in the competition. So Germany away here, 23-year-old Florian Notz. And there was a 15 Classic pursuit in Rucker, Mike, at the beginning of the season. Of course, this is an individual time trial, so completely different approach.
It certainly is. It's you entirely against the clock. We might well see some trains, some athletes who have done 1 lap or 2 laps being joined or tucking in behind the faster athlete who's only on 1 lap of this 5-kilometre. Graham Killick, the man from McMurray in Alberta, And it seems like a very interesting place. McMurray, the fastest growing city or town in Canada. And he is a good performer, 26-year-old now.
Yeah, he was just outside the top 20 in Lillehammer in the recent pursuit there over 30 kilometres. That was a decent effort.
Great effort, I thought, and a wonderful start to the season. Will give him confidence today.
Here's another of the Germans, Thomas Bing here, 25 years of age, and again a man who's come pretty close in 15-kilometre races in classic style to the podium. He's come fourth once, but going so early is a disadvantage. Indeed, it will be for Andrew Musgrave, who will start with bib number 15, and of course all the seeded group will follow him. And well, I was told, and I actually got a text not in the last 30 minutes saying that Chris Freeman wasn't going to start. And you might remember that Chris Freeman was fourth in the World Championships in Val di Fiemme in 15-kilometre classic, so near to the podium, and he's never quite matched that. Well, I apologise for telling you, Chris Freeman, but that was an official message from the FIS that he wouldn't start.
Very strange.
Top 30 up in Davos last year over 15 kilometres. Mattia Pellegrini and Giorgio Centa has got us underway, but you're seeing a new generation of Italians, and of course Pellegrino in the sprint yesterday just underlining not only his good form but the way he's really dominating the World Cup sprints.
He is very much, and well, as number 9 makes his way onto the start line, it's Devon Kershaw, 32-year-old now, but the engine that this man has and his history of racing, and showing good form up in Ruka coming into the early start of the season. Devon Kershaw, 17th in the pursuit, the classic pursuit up in Ruka, the first World Cup.
Yeah, we'll get a little check at about 1,700 metres into how the very, very early starters are doing, but it will be a race that will unfold a little while later. 28-year-old Yoshida for Japan. And as I said, Alexander Legkov, the man who won here last time we had a 15-kilometre classic race, ahead of Dario Cologna. Hellner was actually in 3rd place. Peter Northug was down in 6th, just behind Alex Harvey. And Martin Jonsrud-Sundby was in the top 10. More recently, last year, we had a 10-kilometre classic here. And interestingly, in that race, the victory went to the unpredictable Alexei Poltaranin, because when he's on form, he's a danger to everybody, the Kazakh racer. And Yevgeny Belov, the promising younger Russian, was 2nd ahead of Martin Jonsrud-Sundby and Kalle Halvarsen and Dario Cologna in the top 5. So there's a lot of competitors from today's race who are actually involved in these recent competitions. Dalidovic, one of the senior citizens in his early 40s, just a year younger. Believe it or not, he's gone to 11 World Championships and 6 Olympic Games. That's one more of each of those than Giorgio De Centa.
Quite amazing. Recent form not bad as well, David. He 38th in Davos last weekend. That was 30 kilometres. That was the freestyle. I think he's a little better in the classic.
Well, he races quite sparingly. He's very much a distance racer, Dalidovic, and Bernard Tritcher was due to start with bib number 13. So here's Giorgio De Centa, and we are just a minute or so away from Andrew Musgrave coming out of the start gate.
You see De Centa there. He's not wearing the national team suit, the Italian national team. He did win an FIS race, a high-grade race down here in Italy, ahead of all the rest of the Italians, and most of the big names were taking part. So he is an in-form Italian, and this may secure his place today if he does well in the national team for the rest of the World Cups.
Interesting, Bernard Tritcher confirmed as a non-starter, but they did tell us that Marcus Hellner's not going to start, but at the moment that is not showing up on the computer, so maybe again a bit of misinformation. It would be very interesting to see if Hellner does start, because he's been almost invisible up to this point in the season, but he might have been thinking very much of the Tour de Ski and coming as fresh as he can, and just using this as a barometer race to just see where he is before the Christmas break. Gorgeous day.
Well, Giorgio was wheezing away there at the top of this long climb. We're up at, well, coming up to 2.1 kilometers.
Yeah, there's Simon Andersen going through. Personal best, actually, in Ruka in that 15-kilometer pursuit race, because he was 23rd there, and you can see already he's eaten up the 30 seconds advantage. Michael Sompi, that's the man he's catching there from Canada, from Canmore, who started that bit ahead of him. Be nice if we could get back to the start to see Andrew Musgrave. If we don't get there, then we'll certainly keep you on track with his progress. I think if Mike, if he could finish Andrew Musgrave in the top 30, that would be really, really good for him. He started so well in Ruka, but then since Ruka, at the beginning of the season, things haven't really gone his way.
They haven't. And let's remember what Andrew did here last year in the Tour de Ski. It was a 25-kilometer pursuit competition, but he set the fastest time. Well, most, if not all, of the big names were here. Now, Florian Notz, as you can see, he's not in the track. He doesn't have any grip wax on. He is only using arm power. And you know what? If he's 8 seconds behind now, he'll be 16 and more the next time around. The leader at the moment, Andersen. And he needs to be careful. He skated around a corner. You can step turn, but he's got no grip wax, and I think he'll suffer.
Well, Andrew Musgrave is on his way. So is Sergei Ustugov of Russia. Andrew Musgrave, who was 11th up in Ruka in the 15-kilometer classic pursuit. And, you know, that was a really good run. And then, of course, he ran into trouble because he had a fall, didn't he, in the other part of the race?
Yes, he did. But I think it was a promising, a very good start up there in Ruka, the first races of the season.
Martin Jaks, season campaigner for the Czech Republic. Tony Livers, you just saw starting before him. And we're very close to the start of number 22, Matti Häkkinen, who many of you will remember the Oslo World Championships, actually was the world champion over 15 kilometers in classic style. And I have to say, the Swedes have been pretty quiet in the men's division so far.
And from their 6 starters, well, if it's right, 2 of them not starting, it's quite a loss in terms of points for the Swedish team today.
Well, I'm taking those non-starters that I read out earlier with a bit of a pinch of salt now, because the computer is rather telling a different story.
Oshentsev 4th as well at the World Championships 2011 15-kilometer classic.
So a couple of kilometers along the course there, and you can see the early start there by Andersen of Sweden. Still standing a good way ahead. And Andrew Musgrave, I can tell you, has gone up the first 1,700 meters 5 seconds behind Nunge
of Norway.
Yeah, apologies for that. Just disappeared off my screen. And away goes number 25, Daniel Rickardsson.
David, we're seeing a number of the athletes only double poling using the arm power, and yes, it is faster. The reason they're doing it is because the glide factor back down into the stadium, the skis are much faster without the grip wax on it. The theory is that that benefit of the journey back down from the high point will outweigh the slower time up to the high point. I don't think it'll work over 15 kilometers on this track, as we see Yenget using his legs, so a good grip wax under the base of his skis. And it's a fine balance. You don't want to put a wax which is too grippy, therefore it slows the glide down on the descents, but you need this balance to bring the legs into play.
So Nunge for Norway up here, and remember, Musgrave just travelling 5 seconds behind him on the early clock. This is at 2.1 kilometers, and the Norwegian just a little bit quicker than the Swede. The interesting thing about Andrew is how he manages his energy, and here is the man himself.
And here he is, just using the arm power, so out of the tracks where it's been compressed by the track machine, it is faster out of the tracks when you're only double poling. And it's a brave man, a brave attempt to take this journey just using your arms, but best of luck.
Interesting to listen to Peter Northug early on, because he was saying if this was 10 kilometres maybe, but 15.
I think he might have been bluffing there, but because if anyone can, he can. He does have the arm power to maybe cope with 15 kilometres.
Ustugov.
I thought Ustugov yesterday would be better, David, in the sprints, having showed real form in Davos, where in the final he was leading with what, just 400 or 500 meters to go, and he fell, but didn't have such a good outing yesterday here.
Yeah, Ustugov, who was a couple of seconds quicker than Andrew Musgrave up the first 1700 meters, coming through. But Ustugov, not terribly impressive in Ruka in that first 15-kilometer examination. He was just inside the points in 28th place. So maybe his season hasn't really taken off. And you can see there, Ustugov just going ahead there, and maybe gained a second on Andrew Musgrave in the last 400 meters.
Yes, on that steeper part up to the 2.1 kilometre. But Andrew will now gain on the descent back down. Yes, there are a few more climbs out there. Pity we don't have more cameras out on some of the steeper climbs.
Daniel Rickardson on his way. He was 10th in Ruka, very much a classic specialist. Wearing bib number 32, and the first of the seeded group, and this is Nicholas Durhag, and he was the winner of the 15-kilometer classic pursuit race ahead of Martin Jonsrud Sundby in Ruka at the beginning of the season. Hails from Trondheim, and also a pretty good second place in the skiathlon at Lillehammer as well. So a man in good early season form.
Very much, and he glued himself to Sundby that day on the classic first part of the skiathlon, the first 15 kilometres.
So up to 2.1 kilometres. Volchensev, who was the best part of 4 seconds behind the Norwegian 400 metres ago, and has closed that gap, as you can see, to just 0.06 of a second. So that's a good steady skiing, finding his rhythm, establishing himself. Gorgeous day. What a fantastic day to ski here amongst these Südtirol trees and woods and forests, and above you a bright blue sky. And here's one of my favourite racers. I really do respect this guy. Currently lying 8th in the World Cup rankings. He finished 3rd in Ruka, hails from Lillehammer, and it's Schurotter.
Didn't make the sprints yesterday. His trial early on to make the top 30, he was 46, David, so he hasn't had a tough day yesterday. So surely today Schurotter is one. He certainly is one of my favourites for a podium.
Yeah, he's a very good manager of these individual time trial tests. A little bit further up there, and this man has gone back through the stadium. He's out again now here at 6.7 kilometres. And just to confirm to you, we've just had 1 or 2 others that confirmed have not started. Kalle Halvarsen still under the weather, so he hasn't started. Marcus Hellner, who was the world sprint champion in 2011 and the Olympic silver medalist in the skiathlon in Sochi, he hasn't started either. And Tritcher we've told you about, and those are the 3 that have just come through as non-starters confirmed.
Look at the work which the organising committee has done. No snow, no natural snow. They've brought a lot of machine-made snow in, or they've created it, put it all around this 5-kilometre track.
I always thought this was a little unusual that Toblach would be involved here just before the Christmas break, and then involved again before the for the Tour de Ski.
It's a little unusual that they've opted for 2 of the World Cups coming here, but it is a great location. The organising committee are fantastic under the leadership of Saskia.
Yeah, the Santa dynasty, I suppose we should say, in this part of the world. But without them, so much of the Nordic skiing would just never have happened.
Yeah. Big cross-country family.
Well, Maurice Magnificat, appropriately named, and he absolutely fantastic. in the Davos 30-kilometer freestyle. He gave absolutely everything to finish as runner-up. And I can see Magnificat actually having a progressive second period when we move into the Tour de Ski.
Magnificat is weaker strength, if you like, his weaker aspect technically is his classic of such a strong freestyle skier, and proved that last week with his second place in the 30-kilometer in Davos.
Just saw Besmertnik of Russia going through. You might remember he had a really good result in the Olympic Games, 7th over 15 kilometers in classic style, and the quickest man through now the first couple of kilometers. Wearing bib number 40 here, Alex Harvey from Quebec, and bronze medalist in the World Championships earlier in the year in the skiathlon, and was second in Ruka in the 10-kilometer freestyle race. Again, interesting to see how he can progress in the classic style. He was 12th in the 15-kilometer classic up at Ruka. 32 here, Nicolas Duhaug coming up to the checkpoint at 1700, and he's 4 seconds behind Besmertnik of Russia. Andrew Musgrave, by the way, 22 seconds behind Besmertnik. But remember, what we're thinking about for Andrew is that sort of top 30 place. So we need the seeded group to complete, and then everybody will get a sense of timing. Now, 42, the leader of the under-23 World Cup rankings, and I have to say, Mike, for both of us, a surprise winner. You remember last season in Lahti, towards the end of the campaign, after the World Championships, and this man came out and won his first ever World Cup race. Fabiano.
Yes, such a talented young, and especially in the classic technique, this is his strength.
Polteranin. Interesting, because Polteranin's got winning form in this part of the world.
Needs to be careful. He swapped tracks. Well, he swapped sides of the track there. Yes, it's better to take the inside line, but the jury are out on the track. If you do that too many times, it's perceived as skating.
So Shirota, and you can see there Besmertnik. Difficult to tell whether he's gone out just a little bit too quickly at the moment, but you can see here Shirota often does start with this sort of pace and then picks things up. There'll be quite a few who, if they mistake the tempo early on, will be really paying for this in the last 5 kilometers. And Mike, you've got a view, don't you, about going without wax over 15?
Very much. We saw Shirota there. We know how good he is in the out-and-out, the traditional classic style, which is this, using the arms and the legs together. But he's double poling, and it's fine for the first 2Ks, first 8, first 10, but surely over 15, those small arm muscles superload, and the fatigue really builds in later.
Yeah, Ustigov was quickest through 5,000 meters ahead of Nguyen of Norway and Volchensev. Second of these two coming to the 6,700 meter point. Mathieu Pellegrin, who was quickest up earlier on to this point, but now Ustigov well ahead.
You can see how Ustigov is catching quickly the athlete ahead of him, and the athlete ahead of him just on skating ski, on non-wax skis, will gain on this descent part of the course.
Hans-Christer Holland lying 6th in the overall World Cup rankings. You just saw him popping through there. Interesting for me that early on I noted, Mike, that Andrew Musgrave travelling at about the same speed as Beloff and also Rickardson, and that would suggest to me, as we see Martin Jonsson-Sundby, the World Cup leader, that actually the early pacing might not be too bad from Andrew if he's travelling at the same pace as those two guys.
Without a doubt, big names, huge names in cross-country skiing, and well, we'll have to see Andrew hopefully the second time up this climb.
So the under-23 leader Francesco De Fabiani for Italy, only 22 years of age, and a man who is very much the new generation. When you think about it, you know, Giorgio De Cento started the race 43 years of age. But, you know, Giorgio's continued presence in the squad has inspired people like Fabiani.
It has. Well, of course, Giorgio, after the World Championships in Falun, he stepped back a little bit from the national team, but with his recent success in that FIS race, they brought him back in, and maybe he will be here to stay. What's Sunbi going to do, David? Will he go wax or waxless? I think he'll have wax on.
32 years of age, and Sunbi signing on to the board, which indicates athletes who are committing themselves to race clean. Alex Harvey coming up to 2 kilometers. And just get the idea that Besmetnik might have just gone a little bit too fast.
He certainly attacked it. 2.1 kilometers. Yes, it's mostly uphill to this high point, and he really has attacked it hard, but he is a wonderful technician. Dario Cologna, he's been off form. He hasn't been at his best so far. He was hoping to be in Davos last weekend, and hopefully better today.
Interesting, Andrew Musgrave about 53 seconds but at 5 kilometers behind Besmetnik, but more realistically actually about 24, 25 behind Ustegov, which I think is a more realistic assessment of how he's going at the moment. Well, here's the man, 3 distance wins before Christmas already, lying first in the World Cup rankings, and he got points yesterday, 8 points from the sprint, which was a real bonus. Seemed to really enjoying himself getting into the top 30. And of course, Martin Jonsrud Sundby, not only successful at World Cup, but also an Olympic bronze medalist in the skiathlon in Sochi, and a world silver medalist if you go back to Val di Fiemme. As you see, Alexander Legkov, and Legkov 2014, he won the last time that this classic race was run here in Toblach, and he won it in 37 minutes, 2.7 seconds ahead of Dario Cologna, who was almost 3 seconds behind him, and then Marcus Hellner, who's absent today, 17 seconds behind. And Martin Jonsrud Sundsby was the best part of a minute behind. So it'll be very interesting to see Legkov, who's been working hard, preparing himself for the Tour de Ski. Is this the race where he's really going to come of age?
Could well be. Besmetnik there, 26, looking so good. The initial pace he had up this climb, David, he's simulating the same aggression on the second time up this climb.
I'm still wondering, I mean, he's gone through the first 5 kilometers, he's on his way to complete 10. Is he going to be found out in the last 5? That's the big question. 58 here, Petter Northug. Well, mind games. Is that what his interview was all about? We're about to find out.
Well, if anybody can use arm power efficiently and as good as anyone ever has in this sport, it is Petter Northug.
I mean, what amazes me is the way this man has won World Cup sprints, but also, you know, at World Championships and also the Olympic Games, 50 kilometers in classic style, 50 kilometers in freestyle. I mean, he's a master of that distance. And you're looking at Iversen there going through 6.6 seconds ahead, and this is where it could be quite interesting and quite destructive, because a lot of these races are going to get early splits, aren't they, on Besmetnik, and it would be potentially easy to make a mistake in terms of the speed you need to travel out of the gate.
Distance racer, the World Cup leader from Norway, Martin Jonsrud Sundby aus Oslo, Norwegian.
Well, there you can see the defending World Cup champion, and a great start to his season, because this man is looking to make it 3 in a row. To do it once is great, twice, fantastic. 3 times, that would be something really special. Well, Tudyshev of Russia. The Russians so far having a good start to the race. This 30-year-old who was in the top 15 in Ruka in the Classic Pursuit, ranked 17th at the moment in the overall World Cup. But again, he's better form perhaps in freestyle racing. Now, Dyrhaug of Norway. this is going to be interesting mark here, isn't it?
Well, that's a huge loss. Dierhaug been on the form. We saw that in Lillehammer. We saw that up in the first World Cup in Ruka. But 36 seconds off Bersmientnik. It's a huge gap. Is he pacing it intelligently? Has he got anything left? We would, or he would certainly hope to be playing this tactfully.
Well, it's very interesting to consider Bersmientnik. Now, this will be interesting here. At 6.7 kilometers, has Schurota steadied the deficit? Because remember, he was 16 seconds off the pace earlier on. And you can see there, he's still leaking time in terms of Bersmientnik. And this is what we really don't know. Has Bersmientnik gone too quickly, too early?
Well, I think we said last time Schurota came round, he was 16 seconds off on the first lap, and I think I said he'd be almost double that on the second. Well, he's just under double that, so he's holding in there well. But the third time round is where it really begins to build up, and very difficult to keep that tempo.
Well, the trails in Sochi were pretty tough, and Bersmientnik was 7th over the 15-kilometer classic. They were a lot tougher than this track.
Yes, they were. And Bersmientnik, we've seen him so many times. I think you're right. His pacing has been lacking. He's such an aggressive athlete. Often goes out just a little too hard. But we have seen him in, I remember him in Canmore, where he led for a large part of the skiathlon. And really went out hard, but it was caught again when it came to the freestyle.
Yeah, he's got a podium, Bersmientnik. He was second back in the 2013 season in La Clusaz over a 15-kilometer classic. And that's where his strength lies, in these classic races. So he's very much the man to catch at the moment. And there must be some interesting signboards going out from the coaches here as to what Bersmientnik is doing. Well, I mean, he's doing the right thing because he's early in the race ahead of the seeded group.
Yeah, very much. And Emil Jonsson's quite close to him in the early part. There's, of course, Sundby and Holland, who's a whole lap further down the track, if you like, than the yellow bib ahead of him. And Sundby
quicker than Bersmientnik, up the first 1,700 meters by just 600ths of a second. And Magnificat, who's come out of the stadium at 6.7 kilometers. And this is interesting there. Bersmientnik by 28 seconds from Reuter, and Magnificat, well, he was 19 seconds behind at 5 kilometers. So again, Bersmientnik, the first part of each one of these loops, he's really making ground.
And exactly that, David, because of this steep, it's mostly climbing, so he's got using his leg power. As you say, he's making all the ground by using the legs. Those using just the double poling are leaking time up this climb, gaining a little back on the descents, as they've analysed, as they've sussed out. But my take on this is that it's maybe the more sensible to go with kick wax, bring the legs into play.
Andrew Young on his way.
Sorry, Northug, the wise old dog, he was saying, well, there's no way he'd do 15 clays double poling. I think he is. He's certainly got no kick wax on there to give him grip, but look at the time deficit. That's massive. 30 seconds down at 2 kilometers. He will pace it well, though, David. If anyone paces it correctly, it will be Northug. But that's a huge amount to lose in the first 2 kilometers.
And just to give you some perspective, up the first 1,700 meters, Andrew Musgrave was actually only he was inside 12 seconds behind Sundby on pace. So that was a pretty good start by Andrew. It's a question of whether he can react in the right way to get himself in the top 30.
And look at Sundby. Arm power 1.6 behind Bersmientnik. Rapid fire.
Yeah, Emil Jonsson also having a strong start through the first couple of kilometers, 5 seconds off. Emil Iversen from Norway, 6 seconds off. And Magnificat 10 back, Dierhaug 12. Jean-Marc Gaillard, after the seeded group, interesting that he's 14 seconds off. He could play a part. because he's behind the seeded group, so he will get the advantage of getting information of what those ahead of him are actually achieving. And Dario Cologna, similar gap back to Dario in the top 10 through the first 2,100 meters. And this is Bezmetnik coming out of the stadium here. You can see 39 seconds. So this is now where it's going to be really interesting to see whether the last 5 kilometers, is he going to pay for that early pace?
We'll have to see, but I think it's certainly looking at his, he was into the herringbone run up the climb over the competition offices here, and now he's got the climb up to the high point, 2.1 further up the track, and certainly looked sparky, looked dynamic. And this is the section where he needs to keep that dynamic technique which he has.
As you see, Turnstedt here, I can tell you, going through interval check number 5, which is 7.1 kilometers, and Schurota in second place ahead of Magnificat. It's not too much between the speed that those two are traveling at, but they're 36 and 39 seconds behind Bezmetnik, who of course is heading to the 10-kilometer point.
We just saw,
or just through the 10-kilometer point, I should say.
Absolutely, just saw Andrew Young there, double poling this climb and looking just a little tired. Well, why wouldn't he be after his success of yesterday, the 3rd place in the sprint competition? This is a good time, David, from Iversen. And using the kick wax to battle his way up this climb. 2nd place, 25 seconds behind. Just under half distance.
Yeah, Iversen wouldn't have been one of the out-and-out favourites, but, you know, a very good race in Lillehammer in the double pursuit there. Was 7th, and that's a really good performance. It's just outside his personal best. But certainly in terms of distance racing, that was one of his better results. So through 10,000 meters, Bezmetnik ahead of Ustugov by 40 seconds. Volshentsev of Russia, 3 Russians, 1, 2, 3 through the 10,000 meter point. Interesting. Then Rickardson, 51.7 seconds ahead of Belov. So what's that? 4 Russians in the top 5 at the 2/3 distance.
Looking good. And the Russians traditionally have been stronger in the classic technique than in the freestyle. Polterainen. No grip on his skis, having to keep his hips forward to get this herringbone. For a big, tall athlete, he had to go high tempo up the climb.
Well, at 5 kilometers, Polterainen was some 25 seconds off the lead, so that deficit has doubled, actually.
Now, Emil started really well. Here he is, Emil Jönsson. He's got the wax on, and that wonderful high frequency, the tempo which he always shows us, especially in sprint racing.
Yeah, Emil Jönsson was 20 seconds, so he's lost 11 seconds over the last 5 kilometers. And this is Derhaug, who was 23 seconds behind. And coming to 10,000 meters. And again, another man who's been significantly put back in terms of time by Bezmetnik. Can Bezmetnik keep this going? I mean, I'm beginning to think that maybe he can.
I think so. He certainly has. Bezmetnik came over this hill the last time. There was no... You can often see the telltale signs of a man that's gone too early. There's just nothing left. There's no tempo. But he certainly looked efficient over this climb. Schurota, small figure, and he really puts the tempo into his upper body work, and he's going to double pole up over this building. You see the time loss there to those around him who are have got grip waxed on. He loses on these steep sections, but he'll gain. So they've left him by somewhat 5-6 meters. But
I think the interesting thing is to see what Martin Jonsrud Sundby is going to do, and Peder Northug, when we get to something like the 5 and 10 kilometer points in relation to Besmetnik. I mean, Besmetnik can only do what he is doing, which is to, you know, just push on all the way and then hope that that's going to be good enough. That's Mattia Pellegrin of Italy, 37 minutes, 15 seconds. And Legkov won this in 37.02, some 13 seconds faster. But these tracks would be pretty quick in this compact artificial snow.
Very much. I think if anything, you see how the snow is breaking up, splashing up almost on the baskets of the ski poles. I think there was a slight advantage going earlier when it was still icy from the -4 early conditions. The sun just making it quite soft now on any parts of the track where the sun is shining.
Colonia, 28 seconds. That's not bad, actually. He sort of steadied, actually, Dario Colonia.
It's good, and I think he'll gain on his third time around the 5 kilometer track in relation to those who've only gone for double poling.
So Iversen, Shirota, Colonia, to a certain extent Magnificat, all travelling at about the same speed, and Jean-Marc Gaillard only about 4 seconds off that as well. Into the finish, Pellegrin for Italy at the moment, from Jonas Dobler of Germany, with Devon Kershaw some 26 seconds off the pace, and Simon Andersson of Sweden, who started brightly, 33 seconds, and he's just been pushed out of third place down to fourth place. Giorgio De Centa, 1 minute and 10 seconds off the pace, and the Canadian Graham Killick currently 9th, 1 minute 51 back. And now you can see here, new leader about to take the nice warm furry chair
for a short while.
For a short while at least, and Nunge for Norway does just that.
David, interesting fact here, statistics. Sundby's just gone through the 5 kilometer and he's pulled back the deficit which he had at 2 kilometers. He's gained 2 seconds on Besmetnik, having completed 1 lap. So well and truly showing his form again, even though he doesn't have the kick wax on.
This guy who was 4th in Lahti last year in the 15 kilometer classic, the one that was won by the under-23 leader, and that of course was Francesco De Fabiani. So that was a good run. So finish now, and as you said, it wouldn't be for long, and here comes Sergei Ustigov, who's going to take over the lead as well.
Ustigov on the first lap, effectively he was 30 seconds behind, so he's taken 30 seconds out of Nynget, and we'll see his time beaten as well. Good effort.
Musgrave in the top 30 at about 10 kilometers, but about 1 minute 43, 45 off Besmetnik. But just about hanging on in there for maybe a possible top 30 finish. It's going to be pretty marginal. He's had 1 or 2 frustrating finishes, hasn't he? Just outside the top 30 since Ruka, and it's going to be sort of nip and tuck whether he manages to just find that extra energy in the last 5 kilometers.
It is. He needs to find the spark, and there will certainly be a huge amount of fatigue. But Jonsrud Sundby, just the way, the tempo in which he was attacking the climb, quite amazing. But he's lost 2 seconds, and again, it's on the climb. He loses 2 or 3 seconds. He gains it on the descent. Oshentsev. Final bend for Volsentsev. I think he'll probably just sit in that warm chair for a short while.
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? Because Volsentsev wearing bib number 20, and Russia very much to the fore. Besmetnik, the man who's mostly to the fore, and he wears bib number 26, so he's not far from coming home now, Bezmetnik, through 12.1 kilometers, and he was Bezmetnik 47 seconds ahead of Shirota at 12 kilometers and 57 seconds ahead of Volshentsev. So that just gives you an idea. And 1 minute and 2 ahead of Ustugov, and 1 minute and 5 ahead of Poltoranin, 1 minute 10 ahead of Dirhaug, 1 minute 12 ahead of Belov, and 1 minute 15 ahead of Pellegrin of Italy, who had a moment in the warm chair as a current leader. So this is pretty interesting there, and you could see Volshentsev not disappointed by any means from his run. He seemed pretty happy with that. Iversen in the red for Norway at 10,000 meters.
Well, this is good from Iversen, 38 behind. He will be given all the split time, so he can pull something back from his deficit, but third place, outstanding. Oh, there he is, 1 minute 26 with just a couple of 100 meters to go to his gain, to his benefit.
Shirota beginning to eat into his to the disadvantage, beginning to reduce it, but Bezmetnik coming round, and this will be very interesting to see where he's going to finish. He's obviously going to finish, I would think, definitely in the top 5, but will there be 2 or 3 or 4 who could actually deny him a place on the podium? But Bezmetnik double polling to some purpose there, 52 seconds ahead of Volshentsev. So Volshentsev a little quicker in the run home by some 5 seconds. So maybe Bezmetnik just, and not unsurprisingly, feeling the last couple of kilometers. So Bezmetnik for Russia, ahead of Volshentsev for Russia, ahead of Ustugov for Russia. That's the 1, 2, 3. Then Nguyen for Norway, and after that Pellegrin for Italy. That's a really good run. 1:35 separating the top 5, and Daniel Rickardson coming home now to put Sweden into 4th place.
David, the more I'm looking at the timings down the track now, Sundby, he was up by 2 seconds at the previous time check. He's now down by 5, so I think we are more and more looking at Bezmetnik as the overall winner in this race. Still early days, still a lot of people out there, but he set a phenomenal time as an early starter, and unseeded starter as well.
Yeah, Bezmetnik, despite the fact that, not unsurprisingly, finding it or running out of gas in the last couple of kilometers, but still really impressive. Just look at him now. You can see what he's actually given. I mean, this is over 60 seconds, over 90 seconds since he actually crossed the line.
Still gasping. Yeah, no, outstanding performance, and I really think it may stand the test of time. He might be sitting in that chair for a long time, and although it's a warm day at the stadium, I think he'll be throwing a tracksuit soon.
Well, Belov at 12 kilometers was 1 minute and 12 down, so this will give us another little barometer here as to the finish of Bezmetnik. And Belov 1:14, so Belov didn't make any time on him. So again, that sort of suggests that Bezmetnik, as you say, could well be looking at his first ever World Cup victory.
I think so, and he was composed as he came through the stadium with another 5 kilometers to go. He was keeping that wonderful classic technique which he has. He was keeping it so organized, so composed, and I don't think he leaked or lost much time over the last 5Ks.
Poltoranin 65 seconds down at 12 kilometers. So this is a decent finish by Poltoranin. Poltoranin, who won the 10K Classic here just last year, 55 seconds. So he's finished to some purpose.
As you say, well, that's 10 seconds he's pulled back, and that's because he's got no wax on his skis, pure glide, and he really put the foot down, or put the arms down in that final couple of kilometres.
Dario Cologna, 34 seconds adrift at the moment, and that's through 10,000 metres.
Well, he'll be chasing Schuh-Rothe, who's only, what, 1.6 ahead of him at 10 kilometres, and I think he'll catch him.
I expect Schuh-Rothe to actually eat into that deficit because he is such a strong finisher. But whether he can pull back in 5 kilometres, some half a minute, that is, it's a huge ask.
It is.
Deerhaug, and here, look at Deerhaug coming in now, and this is the man who won the 15-kilometre classic pursuit up in Ruka at the beginning of the season, and the Trondheimer coming to the line now, and 62.5 seconds behind.
I think, David, those who've opted for just using arm power like Schuh-Rothe, I'm convinced the final 5 is going to destroy them. They're going to lose a lot of time, although we'll wait and see. He was 33 seconds behind last time. It's not bad.
It isn't bad, but as you say, he's got the full straight to come here, and he hasn't eaten into that deficit, and you're absolutely spot on in terms of your analysis. And Schuh-Rothe coming home to grab second place, well, and 36 seconds, so he didn't lose that much.
Not bad at all, to be honest. That is pretty impressive.
But Bezmetnik has blazed the trail, hasn't he? 35.30. It's quite a time. When you consider that, Mike, I mean, 37.02 was the winning time 2 years ago. I know, you know, snow conditions are not the same, by Legkov. I mean, that's a huge difference in time.
Well, Sundby it seems to be nibbling into Bezmetnik's time. The last check, he was down by somewhat 5 seconds.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, the snow temperature was just under 0 Celsius, whereas today the snow temperature was -4.
Oh, the strength of this man. Well, it's 5 seconds advantage to Sundby with 5 kilometres to go.
And Sundby gliding down into the stadium complex here. And, well, it's going to be more consolidation for him at the top of the World Cup, but this is the man, Bezmetnik, in the chair, who really does look in control. And Holland, remember, it's taken a long time for Holland to come to the fore in World Cup racing. He was 4th in Ruka, 3rd in the pursuit in Lillehammer, and that was his first ever podium, but he's not managed to really make any impression. And now also what we've got to do is we also need to track back here to look at Musgrave's finish. Well, in 19th place I've got him at the moment in the finish, 228.6 behind the current leader. Could hang on in there for some World Cup points in the top 30. That would be a confidence boost.
It certainly would, and yeah, well done to Andrew. 228 behind, just using his arm power, a very good result.
Magnificat, top 10 at the moment, but 35.40. Look at that time. That is looking particularly special.
Now, Sundby, remember, with 5Ks to go, he had an advantage of 5 seconds, but will lose on the climb.
And Bezmetnik sitting in the chair and still recovering.
Now, what's Cologna got? Has he left anything? He is a fantastic management of his energy supply, but he's certainly not going to be setting any new time up to the top of the 12.1. Musgrave
was 2:10 behind at 12 kilometres, so Lost a little bit, I have to say, in the final run down, the final 3 kilometers into the stadium, but he's taken some interesting scalps, I have to say. And the race currently lying now in 22nd place, 2:28.6. He lost 8.6 seconds over the last 3 kilometers, Andy. Dario Cologna just a second or two clawed back.
Well, he's only to find 3, David, to move up into 3rd place at this stage.
And Maurice Magnificat realising that, you know, this could be a very special day for the man at the top of the leaderboard there, Shirota on the podium. But those are big gaps. Look at those. Those are huge gaps.
We don't often see them as big as that. And what Bersmientic has done today is he's destroyed the early field, but Sundby is still out there and given all the timings. And if anybody can hang on and bring something special to the game, it's Sundby.
Sundby now leading the race, and that's the important point. It's happened at 11.7 kilometers. Sundby is now 3 seconds ahead of Bersmertnik, and that's why there's a sort of concern on this man's face, because he's done everything he possibly can. He's been a runner-up over 15 kilometers classic, and is he going to be a runner-up once again? Sundby ahead of Bersmertnik and ahead of Shirota. That's the top 3 going through the 11.7 kilometer point. So Sundby, I mean, he's strong as an ox, Sundby.
Oh, he is amazing, and the fact that over the buildings there, the steep climb, it's a very steep climb. He's one of the few who didn't have to break into the herringbone, which is the skis way out to the side to get the edges, to get the grip. He just powered up there with double poling, so I think he has the advantage at the moment.
Well, as we see Turnstedt coming on, it won't be long before we get the next time check at 12.1 kilometers for Sundby, and this will be the crucial one, really, because if he's managed to not only here he goes right through,
yes,
and
2.1.
2.7. I've got him 2.7 ahead.
2.7.
Yeah,
it is.
and that means he's lost 6 hundredths. This is nip and tuck. So there's the man who sits there. He's absolutely going to be on the podium. We know that.
It has to be, David, I think, advantage to Sundby, because the terrain back down into the stadium, it's generally down, and the fact that Sundby doesn't have any grip wax on the skis, he will have an advantage, as well as been given all the split times. Good from Iversen, 105 behind. 4 Russians in the top 10,
and that is a very good result for Iversen.
Just seeing David, jury are out on the tracks. They've disqualified Bib 41, and that's Andreas Katz. That'll be for skating, so when you haven't got wax on, it is tempting. It's faster to skate, so clearly he skated too far around a corner and broke the code.
Well, Sundby's the only man who can change the top of that order board. Bersmertnik sitting there. You can see the number of Russians, 1 and 3 in there. Looking down, and further down in the order, Andrew Musgrave now in 27th place, but there are not many dangers to come home. Just ahead of Dolidovic. What do you think? Can he hold on? Just, you know,
he's desperate.
Even if it's a point for 30th place, that will be a boost.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. I thought you were alluding to Bersmientik there. He just had that distant look, and I think he realises he might not win this one with Sundby on his journey back down to the stadium. But yes, Andrews Musgrave, he's had a very, very strong finish to his race. He was down in 34th at the high point of the course. He's pulled that back, as you said, to 27th, so gained many places on the descent.
Yeah, just 1 or 2 have been coming home in recent times to push him down, like Dietmar Knockler and Francesco De Fabiani. who's currently in 23rd place. And, well, actually, in there, did you say Katz was disqualified? Well,
yes, Andreas Katz was disqualified.
He's still in the order, so that would make Andrew Musgrave 1 place higher. And that's probably pretty good, because he's sitting on 30th place now. So, if Katz is disqualified, he's actually 29th. But that hasn't shown up on the Finnish computer. A lot of respect going to Besmertnik. Every one of these guys will know how difficult it is to go out that early and still be leading the race.
Well, that's right. I think it was Sjur Rota there who was congratulating him and saying, well, maybe a good call putting wax on his skis.
Yeah, Musgrave corrected now to 29th place. He's 300 ahead of Delidovic, who's in 30th spot now. Colonia, this is the worry, you see. You've got the likes of Colonia, not just Sundby, who are going to come home, and he will push Andrew Musgrave down a place.
He will, but Colonia's got 4 seconds to find from our previous check to move from 4th into 3rd. He will have that information, desperately trying to, but I'm not sure that Colonia can make that few seconds leap. It's only 4 seconds.
Turyshev is out there as well. So this is another concern in terms of British hopes here, but Besmertnik, the frustration is that we actually can't see Sundby coming home. This is another example of where you really need to see them in the last kilometre and a half coming into the stadium, and I can't quite understand why they never planned the coverage to be able to show us that with a running clock. And Colonia onto the podium in 3rd place. That is a terrific effort from him. That's his first podium of the season. And Shirota 2nd, Colonia 3rd, Volshentsev off the podium. Gritting his teeth, biting his nails.
If he's done the calculation, he'll realise that Colonia has lost 5 seconds from the previous split time to Sjur Rota's time. Sjur Rota had no wax, Colonia had wax, and I think it'll be much the same for Sundby. He'll pull back 3 or 4 seconds on Besmertnik to take the win.
Legkov. And unfortunately, those who are finishing like Colonia now, Andrew Musgrave just outside the top 30, so it hasn't quite happened for him.
Still a good run.
So tough out there, and this has been quite a tricky test, hasn't it, in Toblach?
It has indeed.
But Besmertnik's tactic has blown the whole field apart, really.
It has, and I honestly think that his earlier start number was bib 26, a slight advantage on the first rotation of 5 kilometres.
So the winner of 2 years ago, Legkov, be a little disappointed, but now Sundby.
He knows.
And Kjell-Erik, the public address announcer, in the background, they're getting rather excited about Martin Jonsrud Sundby, because he's just got the 100 to do here. And Besmertnik sitting in the chair, just looking at this. He must be, he must be almost weeping. So close, but yet so far. And Sundby, the grit, the determination. Remember, he was only 3 seconds up, and he's found the best part of 9 seconds in the last 3,000 metres to return to winning ways.
Do you know, he's got such a strong mind, this man. He was given the splits every millimetre of the way, and to have completed 15 kilometres in purely double poling power, outstanding performance. And the gain, especially the last 2 kilometres, he's gained so much in terms of his descent into the stadium on Besmertnik.
Well, Martin Jonsrud Sundby, I mean, what can you say about him? You know, he won the 10K freestyle individual in Ruka. He was second over 15 kilometers in the pursuit. Then he went to Lillehammer, and of course in Lillehammer, in race number 5, he won the skiathlon, and then he won the 30 in Davos. And here we go, yet another pre-Christmas success.
Look at the level in which he takes himself to have recovered now for a minute and over a minute, and still gasping.
And, you know, no sight of Northug. We haven't talked about him for a long time, but he's just not at the races.
No, he had a really poor start. No oomph at all, no power.
And the 100 points that Martin Jonsrud Sundby is going to get for this effort is going to pull it. He's going to go to 688 points, and Northug had 375 before today. So he's really pulling away.
Well, last I had was Northug in 52nd place, and I'm sure he hasn't improved on that.
That's power, ladies and gentlemen. Das ist Kraft aus Norwegen. Der Mann schiebt sich zu einem Sieg.
Well, Martin Jonsrud Sundby, before the day began, he was 200 points, well, 213 ahead of his nearest pursuer, Petter Northug. And now that gap is going to widen. 200 points, that's 2 full competitions ahead. And, of course, the Tour de Ski is the big points opportunity, but it means that whatever happens with Jonsrud Sundby, he's got a cushion, and here comes Northug. And would you have believed that Northug, who hasn't shown great form this season, would be over 3 minutes behind?
Quite incredible. And he told us yesterday, that interview which he gave, he said, well, he wouldn't risk it again just going arm power, but he has, and it really hasn't worked out for him today. Clearly he's backed off, he's realised it was a bad day, and he's not all and out racing anymore. But look at that, 58th, he'll be 59th position by the end of the day or more.
Well, he's an experienced enough racer to know that at the end of the day, Mike, you know, he's got to look ahead to things like the Tour de Ski, and there's no point in inflicting punishment on himself.
No, and when you're 33 seconds off the pace after only 2 kilometres, we saw that first split, clearly he wasn't feeling his best today. And down now, it will be in the 60s, his finish position.
Well, here are the statistics. Yet another race victory for Martin Jonsrud Sundby. And who's to say he won't win a 3rd World Cup title in a row. Still a long way to go, though, through the Tour de Ski, right through February and the Canadian Tour. Well, next we're off to China for the freestyle spectacular, but Martin Jonsrud Sundby, absolutely, yet again, the master of his class. From Mike Dixon and myself, David Goldstrom, thanks for your company. For the moment at least, bye-bye from Toblach.